All right. Okay. So let me know if you're not able to see well, but Amy will let me know. So to start off, well, hi everyone. My name is Anna Ruth. I am the Policy and Advocacy Manager with Catalyst Miami, and I'm going to be one of your facilitators for today. And we're going to start off with some introductions today. We can either go around or you can type them in the chat, whatever you're comfortable with. We just want to know, what neighborhood are you from? Why are you here tonight? And what are your pronouns? And I'll pass it to Amy to get us started.
All right. Well, again, welcome everyone. My name is Amy. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Advocacy and Policy Director at Engage Miami. I am from La Havana, and I'm here tonight because I think budgets matter and our involvement, particularly this cycle, is necessary. And so excited to share out all the resources in this space and be in community with you all. And I will. Why don't we do some like popcorn? Folks are. Um, if you're comfortable, if not, of course, use the chat. But I'm gonna pass it over to Camilo.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, everyone. Camilo Mejia, he, him, his. I also work at Catalyst Miami. I had the pleasure of being your facilitator the first session and might, be on that role later on in the program. But truly excited to be here. I am from Miami, well, I'm originally from Nicaragua, but I live in Miami. And I'm here because I do believe that the budget is, it's the biggest piece of policy at the county, and it's a moral policy. It's a policy that basically defines the priorities of our local elected leadership, and that has a huge impact in our lives, perhaps even more so than state and federal level policy. So I want everyone to be able to participate in that process in our community. And I'll pass it to Richard. Richard Cognos. Or maybe we'll go to Jesus. How about that? Rochelle?
Hi, Camilo. I could go. Um, Hi, everyone. My name is Rochelle, or Richel in Spanish. Um, my pronouns are they and she. I'm here because I want to understand Miami-Dade County's budget and how to speak up at budget hearings in an informed manner. Um, and Camilo, since you mentioned you're from Nicaragua, I wanted to be like, oh, same. I was born and raised in Miami, in West Kendall. Still live in West Kendall, but my family's from Nicaragua. I'll pass it to Howard.
Yeah, hello. My name is Howard Dupree. I live in Miami Gardens, born in Georgia in the USA, but been in Miami since early childhood. So I'm more or less a native almost. Anyhow, I want to just expand my knowledge about the budget, learn what I don't know. And, as a citizen taxpayer, I think I'm obligated to do that. And I'll pass it on to, let's see, how about John Murphy?
Yes, my name is John Murphy. I was the co-facilitator last week. I've lived in Miami for a pretty long time, 35, 36 years. But I'm originally from Ohio. And at this moment, I'm a professor at the University of Miami, but I've been working in various community projects in Miami and internationally also. So who can I pass it to? How about, I don't know, Madeline? Is Madeline there? Is
Yes, I
Abigail there?
am.
Oh, Madeline. Okay. There you go.
Hello, my name's Maddie, and I am actually originally from Baltimore, but I've been in Miami for 13, going on 14 years now, and currently reside in Shenandoah. And I'm here because actually last year I ran into Camilo at the budget meetings when I just kind of signed up on a whim and was like, I don't understand how to engage in the budget, but I'm going to comment and try to figure out how to learn to do this appropriately next year. I was so excited that this class is here. Very passionate about addressing waste issues. That's kind of my lens. But listened to the recording last week and heard, or 2 weeks ago, and heard about so many different avenues you can take to improve the community via the budget. So I'm very excited to be here. And I'll pass it on to, let's see, maybe Bernice if she's there. Oh, no, you she, her pronoun.
Yeah. Oh, she, her. I'm Bernice. My pronouns are also she, her. I'm from Utah, Mexican American from Utah, but I live in the Edgewater neighborhood in Miami. And I am here because I actually don't know anything about the budget and the process, but I do know that what I use, like the buses, could be better. So here to learn why the things that I need don't work as well as they should. And I'll pass it on to Christina Livingston.
Yes, hi. My name is Christina Livingston. My pronouns are she, hers. I work at Catalyst Miami as the intake coordinator. I'm here tonight because the more we know how the budget and all the governmental processes, we can make better decisions, not only for ourselves, but to try to influence other people and make changes. So I want to learn. That's it. Oh, I am originally from Colombia, but I've been living here many, many years, more than 30 years. I don't know who hasn't gone. Anyone who hasn't gone could go.
Yeah, I can go. Hi everyone, my name's Abigail Costello. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently studying at FIU. I live at the dorms here, so I'm kind of in like the Sweetwater area. And I'm going into nursing and public policy. So I really just want to learn about specifically Miami-Dade County budget since I'm from Orlando and lived there for like 12 years. So I'm really a newcomer here and I want to learn specifically about how we can reduce waste in Miami-Dade so that our money is going towards the people in the neighborhoods that need it the most. Wait, my bad. I forgot. Okay, so I'm sending it off to, I'm not sure who hasn't spoken yet. Fabienne?
Hi, yes, thank you. Thank you, Abigail. Hi, everyone. My name is Fabienne. I am born and raised in Miami, and I decided to join. My pronouns are she, her. And the reason why I decided to join this call was because I also have a nonprofit where we focus on women's health, on mental health, on the elderly and the youth. And so, to get a better understanding of how I can have a better impact, I need to know what the budget looks like and how to utilize the county budget to make sure that my organization can also get access to funds as well. And let me see who hasn't gone. Give me 1 second. I think everyone has gone, no?
I have not gone, Fabian.
Okay, Virginia. Go ahead, Virginia.
I can volunteer as tribute.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everybody. My name is Virginia Lora. I work for Catalyst Miami as development manager. Pronouns are she, her. I am originally from Peru, but when we moved to the state, I lived in Utah for a while. I think it was Bernice. I lived in Provo for middle school for a year. Then I moved to Miami, where the rest of my family was like did sort of the rest of growing up here in Miami in Sweetwater and Kendall, and I currently live in Coconut Grove. And I am here tonight because I have been kind of thinking and struggling a lot with what it means with sort of a participatory democracies and what that I like the idea of that and what could that look like in Miami, Florida. Especially because when I think about democracy and elections, it's easy to think of voting and being able to vote as the way we participate in a democratic society, but I am just curious about what all the opportunities out there for people to be truly engaged in their communities beyond voting, especially in situations when sometimes like elections feels like, anyway, the results are not necessarily what we want, what we hope for, and what can we do sort of at a local level, somewhere closer to home or to our backyards that still has bigger impact. Um, anyway, so that's why I'm here to learn and to be stimulated, I think, into thinking, and hopefully I need a mood boost, guys. This is why I'm here to feel uplifted. So happy to spend time with you all tonight.
Thanks.
And then I will pass it off Shabnam.
Yes, that was wonderful, Virginia. You're in the right place for that. Everything that you said. Shabnam Khalili. I'm here on behalf of League of Women Voters and myself as a Miamian. I moved here in 2006 for law school. I grew up in Virginia. My ethnicity is Persian. My pronouns are she or hers. And I think it's super important to just get more and more people into the local budget process because it really does directly determine our quality of life, from schools to parks to road maintenance to public safety. And the more that we can do as a coalition to bring awareness and to educate people and together to learn, I think is the best path forward in community building. So I'm very happy to be here and to see all of you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And if you didn't get to share, please feel free to put it in the chat because we got to get started with the session. So here we go. All right. So for today's session, we have a few learning objectives. The first one is that we want all of you to learn a little bit more about what our county budget looks like and how it's currently functioning. And we want you all to also understand why it's important to have a budget for both cities, counties, your household. Like, you need a budget to survive, to manage your money, to spend it on specific programs and everything. So that's basically like the gist of what we're going to be going over today. And so, yeah, Amy, I don't know if you want to talk about the community agreements.
Yes. And so, well, thank you, Anna, for that. For the folks that joined 2 weeks ago, we all co-created a community agreements together, but always think it's helpful to sort of, share them out loud again and pause for a sec to see if there are any other agreements that we should consider for the time that we're spending together. But just to read them, we had talked about having as a value in this space, step up, step back, right? Which is similar to the one mic, one voice, right? Making sure that we're all actively listening to each other. And sometimes that means that when one person is speaking, maybe, you hold off for a sec your thought, and then you share out loud. Of course, we all come from diverse backgrounds, experiences that inform how we think. But in this space, we ask everyone to, please respect each other's opinions. And again, to the point that I mentioned was to, listen actively, right? We're in this space together because we're curious about the budget. And so listen intentionally. And I'll stop there for a sec to just, give a quick temperature check. Are these feeling good? Is there maybe another value that we should add to this set of community agreements, or How are we feeling? Okay. If I can get some thumbs up to get some like visual confirmation that we're good. Okay. Amazing, amazing. I'm getting some thumbs up. I'm getting in the comment. These feel good to me. Great. Okay. Thank you, Anna Ruth. We can go to the next slide.
Perfect. All right. So does anyone have an idea of what a budget is or would like to like give us a definition or what do you think a budget is? And you could type it in the chat too if you're not able to come off mute.
Well, to me, a budget is like a guidance. How much money you get or how much money you earn, and then you create a budget to cover the basic needs.
Right. Yes.
And that's how you know how much money you have left for other things that are not basic needs.
I love that. Yes. Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome.
And we have in the chat, other comments are, it's how you allocate your income to pay for your needs, a list of commitments, to-dos, and expenses. All right, I like it. Anyone else want to give it a shot? All of the answers have been right, by the way. There's no one right answer.
Yes, it's where you allocate for certain things. Like if you have certain goals, it's a way to create a goal and then to allocate the funds for that goal.
I like that, Fabienne. That's a good segue for what a budget is. So a budget could be it's not only one of these things, it's all three of these things. So Christina and a few others mentioned, when you get your, for example, a paycheck, right? You have to decide how that money is spent, where you're gonna allocate your expenses, your needs, all of that. So it is a fiscal statement, right? The county does the same thing when it comes to how much property taxes, federal grants that we get. They have to decide how can we spend this money so it's we're not overspending, but we're also not leaving money on the table. But it's also a moral statement and a statement of priorities. So it's a moral statement because depending on how you decide to spend the money really shows either your political affiliation, what your where your morals are, what departments you really want to have more funding, right? So for if it's for your personal budget, maybe you donate to charity. Maybe you have extra money and you put it in a trust fund or something like that. But the statement of priorities is super important, especially in what we're going to be talking about today. Depending on where the county mayor or whoever's in charge of the budget puts more money or money allocations to, you can tell what they're looking for to invest in, right? So for a long time or during these past years, we've had a lot of investments going into new pilot programs like eviction diversion programs, right? So we know that that's a priority of the mayor and the county commissioners to push forward for people to not get evicted and to have eviction defense. And it changes from administration to administration, and the same thing could be said for different nonprofits, different businesses. Are they using their money to donate to political candidates when it's election cycles? It really gives you an insight on who or what they believe in. And let me just look quickly in the chat. Yes. Okay. Yeah, so does anyone agree or disagree with this or has seen a budget like a present like as a moral or a statement of priorities or I don't know, anyone want to share any experience that they've seen firsthand, like, wow, yes, this place cares about this specific thing?
Yes, currently we're seeing it right now with the money that's being allocated for deportation and for alligator Alcatraz, which is nonsense, but
Yes. Thank you, Vivian. That you are so right. And that is a good good visualization because it's firsthand and it's happening right, like you said, right in front of our faces with our state budget. That is one of the priorities of the governor, unfortunately. And it's exactly, yeah, what Virginia put in the chat. Put your money where your mouth is. That's literally what is happening. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Also, they took money from FEMA to invest in alligator Alcatraz. So that's crazy that they're removing money to help people during a time of hurricanes, extreme heat, floodings. I mean, everybody saw what happened in Texas to create a facility, you know, to keep people incarcerated.
And I'll add to that, Camilo. The reason why they took money from FEMA is because we are already in a budget deficit as for the state of Florida. We have been for many years. So there is no money that they would have been able to funnel from another department to cover this horrible creation, right? So they pulled from where they were able to, and you know, it's still gonna mess with us in the future for any disaster prep and preparedness. So
it seems like, I mean, budgets have sort of always been moral statements, but it seems to be that this is becoming clearer to people. I mean, more and more people seem to be tying morality to budgets lately, and well, because the things we're seeing happen, it seems like.
That's a good point, John. Yeah. So I feel like for a long time budgets had seemed very like that's for the CFOs, for the money people, the accountants, but now it's definitely become something very, very political. Yeah. Does anyone else want to share before I go to the next?
I'd like to share something if you don't mind.
Yes, go for it.
Okay, and since we're on that subject of FEMA, let's take it a step further. On the federal level, they pulled back and said, go to your state and let the state take care of FEMA. But and if the state is having a problem, then what do you do? What's the answer to that?
They don't have an answer for that.
Well, that's not appropriate. I just don't really think that is the answer at all. Because in the past, it has been the federal government's responsibility to be there for all of the states. Some states don't even have hurricanes, or they've not had any kind of weather type disasters like within a 10 or 15, maybe 20-year period. So why would they have a fund that would be something that could, something that they can handle when something unusual comes up? So that's why they have FEMA on the federal level to take care of all of that. But it seems now that there's no planning whatsoever being done, and everybody is pushing it one step down.
Yeah. Sorry.
Of what I had to say.
No, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I'm sorry if my face is popping up in the middle of the slides. I don't know why that's happening, but hopefully it doesn't happen for the other slides. But thank you for sharing, all of you. We also had in the chat, Andrea put, personally, I feel like budgets have always been political and can be used as a tool to determine exactly who is buying our politicians, because who is getting funding, these no bid contracts, which cost taxpayers money, are always going to be the people bankrolling politicians' elections campaigns. And yes, so Amy's actually going to go into it a little bit more on this next slide.
Yeah, well, I think that everyone covered it, right? And that is that our budgets are, political documents, right? Budgets are personal. They impact our everyday life. And if you've been keeping up with the Herald recently, and I'm talking about the past couple of days, but we've seen, budgets are having a moment, right? And as Anna Ruth mentioned, we're in a deficit. We're roughly at a $400 million shortfall. And so what it is that we've seen is that, Mayor Cava's, team has really taken a stance, right? So there have been proposed cuts to, the parks departments. We're talking about 30 million. We're talking the proposal to eliminate the Office of New Americans, the consolidation of the Cultural Affairs department with the library department. And so again, thinking about how those funds will be reinvested into other departments that are being absorbed into one, right? And how sharing revenue, stream of revenue also impacts capacity for, the sorts of, programming that we are familiar with at, the library, for instance. But I think, to what you all were saying about how we're also seeing the way that, federal budget cuts are, trickling down statewide to the local level. That is all absolutely real. And again, we want to sort of emphasize that, again, budgets are political documents, and if you're curious about how a local government feels about a particular issue, read through the budget, right? And all that to say is that, reading through the budget is also not an easy task. And that's also part of the sort of larger problem that we want to answer within these participatory budgeting sessions. Another point to what we were talking about on the last slide, right? We saw that recently Broward's schools ended their free lunch program for all students. I know that here in this space, we're talking about county budgets, but for Miami-Dade, that process is happening simultaneously with the school board budget, y'all. And in the same ways that we're seeing the privatization of health, et cetera, we're also seeing the privatization of our public education, right? So we're talking charter schools. And so just want to make that point, right? That these are things that are happening all at the same time and that they're not separate. And that if you care about climate, if you care about housing, if you care about, your, potholes being filled, right? These are things that we can advocate for that show up in the county budget. We have this video that we did want to play with you all that sorts of, brings this sort of like thesis home. And we have a couple questions for you all. But Anna Ruth, if you could help me with playing the video.
Yeah. I think I have to stop sharing and reshare. Give me one sec. Shares. Okay, I think I figured it out. All right. Let's see. Oh. Sorry, friend. Okay. There we go. Okay. Sorry. I will be quiet.
Not just a fiscal document, it's a moral document. It's not just numbers and figures. It's not just dollars and cents. Show me your budget and I'll show you who you think counts and who doesn't. Show me your budget and I'll show you what you think matters and what doesn't. Show me your budget and I'll show you your priorities. Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And I have to say that if this budget that is being proposed were an EKG, it would suggest that the United States Congress has a heart problem. and is in need of moral surgery. Why else would you propose, among other things, to cut up to $880 billion from Medicaid? I could talk about many aspects of this budget tonight, but I'll just stick with Medicaid. The programs that provide health care to the most vulnerable citizens, to children, to the severely disabled, to seniors in nursing homes. In fact, 71% of all Medicaid enrollees in Georgia are children. 71%. And I think it's important to underscore that, because sometimes when we use these terms, Medicaid, there may be folks at home wondering, well, who are we talking about? Who are these people? Well, 71% of them are your children. And so this budget is dangerous. It is cynical. It is wrong-headed.
All right.
Right. And so, with that said, right, as we're talking about affordable housing, we're not talking about these, buildings, et cetera. We're talking about people, right? Budgets are fundamentally about people. And so with the sheriff's office asking for $100 million more, while seeing cuts to organizations that are filling the gap of housing services, et cetera, it begs the question of what are our priorities as a county? And I think you will also, mention, of course, the construction of the detention facility in the Everglades, in the Cypress. Again, funneling state money that would have supported things like ESOL language support. And yeah, just, really want to sort of land the argument here that, again, budgets are about people, y'all. And they're not these abstract, documents filled with just algebraic equations, right? They're about us. They're about our neighbors. They're about they're the difference between us getting funding for utility assistance, right? If you're behind on a electricity bill, there's funding in the budget that supports you in that. And so again, just sort of want to ground us in that. And Ruth, could we go to the next slide? Yes, Christina.
So my question is the concept of a budget being a moral document, is this a new concept, or is this how it has always been, or is it a new concept?
Yeah, that is a really great question. So this is not a new concept whatsoever, right? So movement organizers in the global South, so we're talking Latin America, they have always understood budgets being a question of morality, right? Budgets being about people. And so making that connection explicit here in the global North, in our county, again, it is not new whatsoever. And so I think for us, it's being explicit that, when we're showing up to these town halls, and to these hearings, that we're not talking about things that live in the abstract, right? We're talking about ourselves. We're talking about our people. We're talking about our neighbors, residents that we, check up on. That's what makes up a county budget.
Okay.
I hope that was clear. Thank you, Christina, for that question.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and as we sort of move through this, presentation, right, want you all to also, reflect on, okay, you have your own personal budget, right? You allocate your income in ways that reflect your own priorities, right? That reflect the things that are important and meaningful to you. So also think about the ways that this shows up in your everyday. But again, we went through this dollar bill in our first PB session, but want to sort of, refresh us again. So for every dollar of our taxpayer dollar 19 cents of that goes to public safety. Again, public safety here is a sort of broad term that includes corrections, fire rescue, emergency management. 20 cents of that goes to neighborhood and infrastructure. So think of your NEAT teams. So these are teams that are spread both in incorporated and unincorporated Miami-Dade that fill our potholes, take care of our streets. 7 cents of that goes to recreation and culture. So think of your Little Havana, like First Fridays, if you've ever been to that. These are these are funded through that. And then our constitutional offices, which again was a vote that was decided in 2024, that created these independent constitutional offices like the sheriff's office, the property appraiser, tax collector, supervisor of elections, again, making them independent, which also means that they need a budget to run, right? Need a budget to operate, need a budget to pay their staff. And so more will come on that, but just sort of want to make that caveat there. And then on the next slide, it'll show us a little bit about, again, as we're thinking through how does this show up in our personal lives. Public safety for us could mean thinking of home security, right? Thinking of insurance, right? How much are we putting into these things? Also want to say that safety is subjective to each of us, and so what we think of safety might look differently for someone else, right? I will say for the county, safety means increase in police funding, right? Police presence, and we have seen that historically throughout the budgets. Transportation and mobility, which again is 8 cents of that dollar bill, which supports things like our bus, right? Our buses arriving on time, our Metro Mover, all of these things live in that sort of thematic area. And if you're curious about how these get, broken up, etc., these are all Mayor Cava's like funding priorities, and they're split between these thematic areas. Again, bringing it back to us and as individuals, if we're following the sort of dollar graphic, that would be 20 cents of our dollar to home maintenance, repairs, HOA fees, recreation and culture. These are our gym memberships, things that we, want to do outside. So hobbies, time spent vacationing, etc. And so we hope that, through this sort of breakdown that you're able to see, again, how this would sort of fit in our day-to-day. I am curious though, and if I could get maybe two volunteers to come off mute. How do these priorities feel, right? Like these are the county's priorities. Do they feel representative of our community's needs? And where in this do you see that the county is placing the most value on? If we're looking at the cents to the dollar.
Amy, can I add to, I don't want to be one of the two, but just add
yes,
clarification here that can you go back to the previous slide, the one that you had with the breakdowns? Okay, so these categories, for instance, where it says health and society, 11%, and we see rent and mortgage, that's not 11% in rent and mortgage. That's 11% for all those things. The actual housing allocation of the county, it's closer to like 3%. So imagine if only 3% of your salary went to pay for your mortgage or your rent. Would you be able to afford that? Probably not, unless you're super wealthy, right? But just so people know that these percentages include the entirety of the thing, not just rent and mortgage 11%. No. Rent, mortgage, healthcare, prescriptions, emergency care, hygiene, all of it, 11%. Housing in itself, in and of itself, only about 3%.
No, that's a really great point. And I think to add to that, right, we know that our budget is a multi-billion-dollar budget. We're talking $12.7 billion. And a department like community action and human services, where a lot of housing support lives in, a department like that, in comparison to other departments like the sheriff's office, like police, corrections, etc. I mean, Kazi's only receiving short of $5 million, right? So again, think of that like small sort of, percentage that's also weaved into our larger, multi-billion dollar. I'm seeing Andrea with the question. So I have a question. With regards to neighborhood and infrastructure, does that include the money given to the individual municipalities, which then allocate them separately to their own subcategories? So that's a really great question. So a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to use the example of the city of Miami. City of Miami had its own budgeting process a couple weeks ago. And they also similarly were allocating funds that they collect through, property taxes and other proprietary revenues. And so when we're looking at the county budget, we're looking specifically at the county as a whole. But yes, municipalities run through their own budgets and also do this sort of same practice of reallocating funds to one particular, funding area, etc. I think Madeline also wrote in the chat, public transit is shockingly low, which has repercussions for climate resilience, job, and health access. That's right. And we know that a lot of, ridership in Miami-Dade is, huge. And we also know that folks are, dependent on buses to get to their jobs, to pick up their, pharmacy prescriptions. And I see Fabian with their hand raised. Go for it.
Hey, so I have a question because looking at just the way the political climate is, I'm looking at how our mayor is handling this, and I feel like this is like a very unique situation. And so my question is there a county that we can look at as an example of what a good budget looks like, as opposed to like just looking at our county? And then also, as I'm looking at what percentage is being allocated, when we think about infrastructure, 20% is a lot, especially when we talk about like even our highways and how we're paying tolls and all that stuff. So to have another additional 20% allocated for that is kind of high. And yes, I do feel that, with all the roads that are being fixed, like, yes, it's necessary. But at the same time, when you think about where the budget doesn't make sense and where it's really low, is just like, how do we get it to make sense when we talk about just like transportation, like that was brought up before, you know what I'm saying? Like, or when we talk about recreation and culture, which also assists to reduce violence and things like that. Like, how do we find a budget, or who has a budget that we can take a look at to say, okay, this is a community or a county that we like the way they operate and their budget makes sense to us?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I think there are many ways to answer this question, Fabian, but the way that I'm going to attempt to sort of answer it is that, back to what we were saying with, budgets being about people. I think budgets are also, culturally specific, spatially specific, right? So Miami is different from a Los Angeles. It's different from a Massachusetts, right? But one thing that I think is, again, particularly important for this conversation, and I think for, to your point of, is there a model that we can turn to? I think that there are multiple, right? I think, Flagler County has an accessible budget breakdown that shows through visuals, right? So through maps, through graphs, programmatic line items for each department program that makes it easier to sort of mobilize around departments, programs that maybe need additional funding, et cetera, that I think helps with participation, right? I think right now our budget is, condensed into 800 plus pages, and we're talking strictly pages, right? The Office of Management and Budget, they like pie charts, but they leave those pie charts within the first sort of pages of the county budget document. But yes, I think that there are multiple budgets that we can turn to as a sort of template for like placing community first. I do want to say that participatory budgeting as a practice, New York City has a running participatory budgeting process where they allow people of all ages, I think the lowest age is 15, to vote in how to spend these public dollars, right? And by public dollars, we mean our taxpayer dollars that are, flexible dollars and can be moved from one department to the other or can fund, programs in, different areas. But I think that New York has a really great, program that again allows for participation of all people, again, all ages, and also regardless of immigration status. And people can vote for projects that they think would benefit their neighborhoods, their communities. And it's an open process. I do want to also mention that, and I think that this is something that Camilo highlighted in the comment section. These are numbers from last year, right? These are 2024, 2025 numbers. And so what those numbers will look like this year will be drastically different, right? So also want to sort of, say that out loud in this space too, that, we're seeing here that in 2024, there was 20 cents, and that was a sort of priority for, for the budget. But how we're seeing things emerge for this budget, that looks a little different. And so again, thinking about the sort of choices that are being made, both in this administration and also on the dais, right? Yeah. Are there any additional questions or anything that we can?
Amy, before we go on, we can make sure that in our recap we'll include some examples of like good
Yeah.
counties or municipalities that are have a more even distribution or maybe are prioritizing whatever their area needs are as number one versus like maybe other things that are important but maybe not top priority. So we'll make sure to include that in the recap.
Perfect.
And yeah, sorry. I see Christina had her hand up.
Yeah, okay. So currently, how does Miami-Dade decides what percentage is going to each category? What is the current process that they have? Or who makes those decisions, or based on what?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So we have a slide with the timeline, but to answer that here, departments make those decisions, right? So they meet internally January, February, and they have these conversations with their, budget staff. And then that is then communicated to we call them, budget heads at the Office of Management, that then relay all of that information between, again, the mayor's administration, departments. And so it's this kind of circular, information sharing. And so again, this process really starts. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I wanted to add if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
Christina, a lot of the times it also depends on who is in power. So if the new sheriff's department is requesting more money and the mayor and the county commissioners are very like pro police or pro more yeah, more police like in different areas, or they are for it, they will give them that funding. And so they'll remove funding from another program, or they'll end something to make sure that the sheriff's department gets more money. So yes, it's the budget like each head of the departments that makes their little breakdown of how they would spend their money, but it's also who's in power that can decide if they're going to get more or less funding. And it also depends on how much money we have. This year is really going to be this dollar bill that I'm showing on the screen might look super different because we had been getting a lot of money from the federal government for COVID and other different things. And that money was subsidizing a lot of our programs, which now the money's run out and we are facing a huge deficit where they're cutting departments, like Amy had mentioned, and they're merging stuff like the Office of New Americans, right? Right, Amy?
Yeah, so that office in particular is, being proposed to be eliminated. But as Anna Ruth was saying, there are other departments that are under consideration of being consolidated into another, which just essentially means a merging. Christina, although yes, everything we just said, and I think what's important to sort of take away from this is that people are not involved in this process whatsoever. And that's not because we don't want to be, but it's because there is no room for participation, right? Once these budgets are finalized, they're then sent over, to the administration. And then there is room in between, right, for orgs who are curious about the sort of, budgeting process before the budget gets formally released. But really that happens internally, right? It happens in silos. However, we did see this year that in May, if I'm getting that month correct, there were town halls where the mayor did, present on the budget, and there was room for sort of that that feedback and public comment. But again, leading up to that point, for the most part, budgets have already been drafted, formalized. And so what we're saying in this sort of PB session is that we think that in those earlier stages where, again, those budgets are still being deliberated, they're, being looked at, allocations, projections of allocations are still being made, that there is room in those months for the public to participate, for the public to say, hey, actually, this is how you should be spending, money that I'm paying in property taxes. This is how you should be spending public dollars. Christina, is that clear?
Yeah, so but one thing is people participating, but basically there is no system in place that will show them what areas in the community are in need. There is no such a system. They just go with whatever will they want. Is that in general terms something like that?
That's correct. Yes. The only space for us to provide, and I'm going to use this term loosely, input, right, is through the neighborhood budget town halls that they put on the month of August. And so these are spaces that operate more like a Q&A space where you can ask questions about the budget and you'll get a response from either the Office of Management, you'll sometimes get a response from the mayor, who is there taking questions. But again, leading up to that point, the budget is already, it's been written. Budget hearings, right? Yeah. Budget hearings, though, is that place where, come September, commissioners are, have looked at the budget and there is space for us to,
Do you know what my shoes are?
be at government center and, say what we have to say about the budget. Is it will it meet the needs of our communities? And they give us some time within that deliberation period to say everything. And again, these happen. There are two budget hearings. The first one really is the one that we can sort of advocate for all of the things that we're going to advocate for, and then cross our fingers that those things that we have advocated for are amended into the budget by that second hearing. So that's not, so yes, I said everything earlier, right? And it is looking pretty grim, but there is that space within that sort of public comment period where, and in the first budget hearing where we can advocate for all the things we're going to advocate for. And then there is, and we have seen this in the, budget organizing work that we have done as a coalition within our orgs, that when we show up and we show up loudly and we call for the things that we want funding for, sometimes we win, right? And that winning looks like from that first hearing, the things that we asked for gets amended into the budget. So there's still hope, right? These processes aren't open to us early on, but we still show up and fight. And John, I saw that earlier. You had your mic off. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, I was just going to say that if you're in terms of the budget calendar, it makes it sound often that there's a room for participation throughout this process, but there you have to make a distinction between internal communication and communication with outside of that, the public facing. And if you look at the budget calendar, my opinion is overwhelmingly most of the communication is internal between budget, between departments and so forth. And then we do have this opportunity. There is a public facing opportunity for people to participate. But like you're saying, a lot of these decisions have been made by that time. And this whole point of participatory budgeting is to move the people's input further upstream. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Thank you for that, John. And moving on to the next slide. All right. Yes. So as all of this information is sort of sitting with you, right, we also, again, want you to think of, if you were sitting on that dais, if you were the mayor, how would you, allocate all of these different, funding, things like neighborhood infrastructure, transportation, etc. And so I am going to drop this link in the chat. Okay, here we go. Okay, and this link will take you to a Canva whiteboard. And again, we want you just to think of how would you sort of split this, dollar bill, right? Thinking of your neighborhoods, thinking of your communities, what makes the most sense. And again, if we're thinking about, politics and sort of morality of these, budgets. Sorry, y'all. Can everyone access that document or?
No.
No.
Can you refresh and then let me know if it's letting you?
Let me.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
There we go. Okay, perfect. All right, y'all. So again, we're asking you to split this dollar, and however way you see fit, and you will see that there's underneath that dollar a little rectangular box. Again, fill it in with the sort of percentages that you think make the most sense for your neighborhoods. And we're gonna give y'all, how does 7 minutes sound? Are we good on that time? Yeah? Okay.
That's good.
All right, y'all. So I'm gonna let you all on this. Oh, yes, I never go for it.
No, I was gonna say, and if you're having a hard time, we can also you can also put all your breakdown in the chat and we can add it in to one of these dollars.
That's right. That's right. All right, y'all. So by 7:12, I'm gonna ask for you all to return back.
All right, they're finishing up, everyone. Sorry.
No, no, that's right. That's right. We're about to hit that 7:12. We're at 7:12. All right, y'all. Okay. Well, I'm gonna let you finish up for those that are still writing. But want to invite two volunteers to sort of walk us through your dollar distribution and your reasoning for it. So whoever wants to go, just unmute and go for it.
I'll go.
Go for it.
Just want to mostly talk about the housing allocation. I put 50% on housing, and that is because there are a lot of people in Miami-Dade County who are paying upwards of 60% of their income in housing due to the housing crisis. In some places, during the worst of the crisis, we saw increases of even 100%. So people having their rents doubled and ending up not being able to afford their homes. So I think that while the crisis lasts, I think the county should be spending a lot of money on building and helping people with vouchers and whatnot. Instead of that, because of the cuts at the federal level, they're actually cutting and freezing programs that are helping people with their expenses. But I just wanted to explain why I allocated so much to housing. Ideally, in a just world or somewhat just world, you would only spend 25% of your income on housing. That's a healthy allocation. But we're far from healthy here. People are spending most of their income on housing and still not making it.
Thank you for that, Camilo. And I think you're absolutely right, right? We know that folks are on cost burden, and that means that you're spending more on your rent than you would other things that are equally as important, right? Okay. Anyone else want to go next?
Hi. Mine is Andy. I don't know if it's showing up. Wait, hold on. Yeah. At first I just wanted to put like one thing, but then I saw Camilo doing the entire 100%. So I was like, I wonder what I would come up with. But I wanted to talk about like sustainable waste management because I feel like pollution is a really big issue that's like not talked about enough. So things like um our trash and also where our trash goes and recycling and composting and all that good stuff. And like, I feel like recycling would be really huge for our city if we had a bigger recycling culture. And then city planning, like coming up with ideas to make our city walkable. I feel like there should be a committee for that. Because I see like a lot of people getting degrees in city planning and stuff, and they're always talking about like walkable cities. I'm like, that'd be so cool if Miami could be like that. Then I put 20% for education, 20% for construction, mostly just fixing like impoverished areas. I don't think we really need a like more roads, just fixing the stuff we already have. Then 10% for arts and 10% for mutual aid. Because hopefully like um with a walkable city that like takes out a walkable city and also like constructing more housing and then also like recycling saves a lot of money. So I feel like even though it's only 10% for mutual aid, it still like help out a lot.
Thank you for walking us through that, Miranda. And to your point about a sustainable waste management, there's a incinerator vote that's happening this Wednesday at the Government Center at 9 a.m. That I think everything you said about recycling, pollution, etc., and how we're, caring for our waste is incredibly important. And again, we see it show up in the budget. So thank you for that walkthrough. There's room for maybe one more person that wants to write it in the chat. And then I think we can go to the next slide. How does that sound, Iris?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And if any of you are interested in going to the government center on Wednesday, I think MC is still on the call. She's our climate justice manager, and she can help you get connected. So I don't know if MC, if you can share your info in the chat. But let's go on to the next slide. Sorry, there we go. And actually, let me just make sure that it's gonna share properly. All right, cool. Can you all see the budget calendar?
Yes.
Okay, nice. Okay, so we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but I wanted to still go through with it. So this is just kind of like an outline. Sometimes it's not exactly like this, but for the most part, it usually doesn't change. Um, so in January, the budgets are prepared. This is when the county staff, so the mayor's office tells all the departments, uh the housing department, the human services department, COSD, all of these departments, they're like, all right, it's budget season. Let us know what you need money for, what programs you're gonna cut, or which ones you need more allocations for, and they get all of these budgets together. Then they have something called public budget discussions, which are usually in like February. And I believe these are when they're kind of like info sessions, but they're also like listening sessions at the same time. I think I'm getting that right, Amy? Where this is where like they kind of go to neighborhoods part one and they like listen to concerns and things like that. Or no? Am I confusing that with the March or June?
You're confusing that with August, but I will say though that this is ideally where we want to be in, right? This is the place where, again, early within the budget process, we want for there to be a public input. The discussions that happen, those majority of the time are internal conversations, again, as John was saying, between departments, between staff, again, making those sort of allocations, prioritization, setting that list.
Got it. Okay, yes. Okay, I think I know what I was confusing them with. Yeah, so okay, so sorry everyone. So this is an internal discussion that happens. But then in March, we have a preliminary budget that becomes available. The mayor usually does like a short statement on the budget. Maybe she mentions like they noticed that this year they're not gonna have a lot of money in the budget, or that they start like putting out feelers. So this year we've had a bunch of feelers put out on budget cuts. Budget cuts are coming. Just be ready for them. Be ready, be ready. And like I said, the budget's not being released until tomorrow. In June, they do pass the millage rates. And this is really important. And I think, Amy, you want to talk about it. And I saw that Madeline had their hand up.
Yeah, just very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So the March sort of, preliminary budget, what that means, y'all, is that there is there's an event that happens where the mayor talks about the budget. This year we had it at the Miami Senior High. And this is kind of like the mayor's like formal, what do we call it? There's a word I'm thinking of. the like public address, right? And so this is streamed across YouTube. And again, this is the mayor talking to the public directly. Again, this year happened State of the County. Yeah. Exactly that. State of the County. She talks to the public. She talks about what is the budget most likely going to look like, and makes some of that public. But again, leading up to this point by March, things are still pretty tight. The only difference for this year was that in May, there were public town halls that were held where, again, back to that sort of like Q&A, there was that opportunity for you to ask questions, to the mayor about the budget.
Thanks, Amy. And do you want to talk about the millage rate, and I'll talk about the upcoming dates for the budgets?
Sure. So I won't get too specific with the millage rate because I feel like this in itself is a whole presentation. But all you need to know is that the millage rate is essentially how much our properties are being taxed. And if you remember, and there's a future slide coming up that will talk about how property taxes support our county services, really how it funds our county services.
Perfect. Thank you. And so in the chat I had put earlier, because someone asked like, well, when is this new budget released or anything? It's actually going to be released tomorrow at 11 a.m. There's going to be some press conference. You can probably find it on the county website if you just type in Miami-Dade County 2025 budget. And they'll have a live stream there. I'm sure on the mayor's social media or Miami Herald it's also going to be available. So basically from July to August-ish is when we have time to deconstruct the budget. And this is a document that is over 1,000 pages long. There's like multiple volumes of it. We do budget breakdowns. We've done them together, Catalyst and Engage and other organizations. And we try to come up with a list of priorities of where we see that there's budget deficits to request more funding for. And so usually in August is when they have these like I'm not gonna call them listening sessions, but it's just like more like an info session. They try to do them in like the north part of the county, the central and the south. Sometimes they do them in the west side too. And they're very heavily attended by either county staff and community members. This is where they'll talk about the mayor's priorities, and they'll talk about what they are allocating money to. And it's a good space to ask questions. And, you have the mayor along with a lot of her staff and other department heads that can help answer questions. So if the dates are released tomorrow, we'll send them out in the recap. If not, we'll let you know at next session because they will be released. Then in September, we do have the dates for the 2 public budget hearings, right? So these are going to be September 4th and September 18th at the Miami-Dade County Government Center. I believe the address is 111 Northwest 1st Street, something like that. If you type in Miami-Dade Government Center, you will get the address, but they usually start at 5 p.m. and they can go on until midnight. So they try to do them in the afternoon so people are able to come after work and you're able to give public comment. They usually limit the public comment to 1 minute. We're supposed to be given 2 minutes, but because they won't have so many people, they do go down to 1 minute. And usually, the first budget hearing is where you'll hear all the everyone's priorities, right? Where people are asking like, look, find money for this specific program or take money away from this and allocate it to that. And there's a little bit of space in between the first budget hearing and the second budget hearing to make it happen. However, during the second budget hearing, that's when they're going to approve the budget. So if you want something to get funded, ideally, you would already have been working on it before any of the hearings, but if it's last minute, then the first budget hearing is like the one we need to be at. Then the budget more than likely will be approved. These more recent budget hearings have actually not lasted that long. They used to go until like 2 a.m. I remember during COVID, it was virtual. And the commissioners, some of them were in their pajamas. I remember that was it was very funny to see, but there was a lot of people that spoke that time. And now they've tried to really make sure that they finish the hearings by 11:30. So the commissioners will also keep their comments short. And then it passes, and then in October, the new budget is enacted. So that's basically how the process works. We usually try to get, if we really want to get more investment in something, they say that try to start connecting with these departments from the government between January and February, because it's right when they're like developing their budgets, they're talking about things, they might be open to conversation, but not to worry, we still have time. And if it doesn't happen for this year, we'll make it happen for next year for whatever our priorities are.
Anna Ruth, can I add one more thing? I'm
Yeah,
so
yeah.
sorry. So Madeline asked in the chat, she said, is there no opportunity to engage in the February public discussions? So there's like a two-part answer to this, right? Again, these are internal conversations that happen within departments, but if you're a member of an organization like Catalyst Miami, Engage Miami, and other folks, we do have internal conversations with department heads where we ask them, what are the department's, funding priorities? But again, these are internal conversations that happen. What I like to say to folks though is that if you are particularly curious and maybe you're not a member of any org, but you still have that curiosity, right? You can still reach out, right? You can reach out to county staff, and this is public information. But yeah, this is truly case by case. If they respond to your email and they, have that meeting with you, then you'll know where the sort of, department is headed at. But again, these are internal conversations.
I'll add one more thing. Sometimes they do have listening sessions, and there's no real timeline for them. This year, they only gave us less than a week's notice for these listening sessions. I think they were in April. And it was kind of like we found out the Wednesday before that on Friday, Saturday, and Monday, they were going to be hosting listening sessions to hear community priorities. So what we've been asking for a long time is for them to make this to be a priority, to not have short notice for listening sessions, to make them more ample than just 3 listening sessions around the county. That's not enough, right? And to make them throughout the year. So that way it's not just like, okay, we're just gonna do these 3 to satisfy that we did community engagement, and then we won't talk to you until the budget is released. So that's my take on it. Sorry.
All right, y'all. And so if you're curious, right, where does the money come from? How does it sort of, how is it operationalized? Again, this is a, pretty old graphic, but I think still, holds true to, again, where does the money come from? When you hear the term capital refers to expenses that are infrastructure related. So think about how much funding a county is spending on bridges, roads, maintenance, water and sewer upgrades. Operating is typically referred to as the general fund, and operating is also where we see a lot of flexible dollars. And by flexible, we mean that again, they can be moved from program to program, department to department. So oftentimes, or really when we show up to the county budget hearings, we are typically, again, fighting for general fund dollars that have that level of, flexibility. Operating budget covers things like your day-to-day expenses. And you will also see that this is also the fund that makes up a lot of our budget, right? Because we have a lot of employees. So the operating budget also covers salaries. It covers like your benefits, services, programs, etc. What's also important to note here is that the operating budget, or again, general fund, usually covers expenses for a 1-year period, while the capital budget are expenses that are made over several years. And again, also why when we show up to the hearings, we're typically fighting for those general fund dollars. If you see the sort of graphic on the right side, proprietary refers to funds that are self-supporting, right? So think of your trash, right? You pay for trash collection. So that's a revenue scheme that the trash department has. Your water and sewer, right? We pay for water. And so those are things that are referred to as a proprietary. Tax supported, these are things like again, our property taxes. These are our sales tax that again fund so much of our county services, like the libraries. Camilo, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the two main industries that generate income for the county are tourism and trade. And then in terms of trade, the airport and the seaport are the two biggest money makers in the county, because Miami is a hub. It's an air hub and it's also a sea hub, which means that there's a lot of commerce that comes through Miami and Miami-Dade County. And so a lot of money comes from that as well. And they do care a lot about that industry. The main industries are trade, tourism, but then also real estate services and other stuff. But yeah, those are huge money makers, and they put a lot of emphasis and importance on those on those two entities, basically.
Yeah, thank you, Camilo.
Sorry. One last point to that, before we move on to the next slide. Yes, to the whole tourism bit. If you all saw in the news recently, the county did allocate $42 million to the FIFA stadium. So when we're talking about, which departments, which areas are, generating the most revenue, these are things that, the county considers a priority, right? Sorry, I'm seeing some questions come up. 42 million to where? To the building of the FIFA Stadium, Virginia. Yeah. 42 million, y'all, which again takes us back to the larger conversation we're having about, the prioritization of funding of these different issue areas. And then we're going to move on to the next slide. Madeline, yes, I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, yes. I had a quick question. Sorry if it's silly. I know there's no such thing as a dumb question, but if you go to the previous slide, so like for the proprietary funds, do those funds have to go towards like proprietary purposes? Like, for example, if solid waste is a proprietary fund, does that have to fund solid waste initiatives, or can it go kind of it be allocated in different areas. And my next piece isn't really a question, but it just like made me think of this because I was at the Resiliency Tech County Committee meeting earlier, and they were talking about how, like, there's all this conversation about how our solid waste services like needs to generate income, but then Commissioner and Chair Gilbert was like, it actually doesn't. Like, it just needs to like cover our bases. Like, we shouldn't be using waste management to generate revenue. It's like just a service that we owe our people. So sorry, long-winded, just kind of thought I was having.
Yeah, no, and that is a really, really great question. So money that is collected by the Water and Sewer Department, that all has to fund water and sewer. So these are not flexible dollars. They cannot be moved.
Okay. And then like, so there, I guess like in the context of waste, like there's not really an incentive for us to try to get more money from waste to go to other things. We just kind of need to like cover our bases there.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And in recent years, we haven't been paying enough. Or from what the budget like arguments that we've heard, we are in a deficit.
Okay.
Yeah. It it and I don't know how that happened or why it happened. I don't know what was the reason, but I remember from the past 2 years we have not they've raised the waste like how much we pay slightly, and I think they're gonna increase it again this year because it just has not been enough to even cover like the basic like things that we need.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I'm gonna breeze through a few of these slides because we are running short on time, but we kind of already talked about this, how our budget priorities set in our current system. We talked about the people in power, but also having community voices and input helps a lot. Who decides what gets funded, and do these priorities reflect your community's needs, which is a big thing that we can kind of discuss, but I'm gonna go to the next slide and then we'll discuss there. All right, so participatory budgeting, right? This whole session program is on participatory budgeting, and participatory budgeting is community-led decision making, it's transparency, it's inclusion. It's bringing everyone together to decide how this money, this really huge budget, is being spent. Obviously, we know that we wouldn't be in charge of the entire budget per se, because there's some contracts and things that have been already established from years past that are going to continue to be funded. But what would it be like to have like one portion of it, at least $2 million, $3 million, to decide how that is divided? And so last time we had kind of like a homework question just to think about, think and reflect on your past participation in local budgeting or community events. What did you notice that could be improved, and how would you like to participate in future participatory budgeting processes? So I don't know if anyone had thought about it. Have you ever gone to a county event? How did you feel? What do you think could be done better? And yeah, we'll just take one or two people. It doesn't have to be specifically budget related. It could be like a community meeting that you went to that was hosted by the county.
I can jump in and just share. I kind of touched on this in my introduction, where, um, but we do a good amount of a decent amount of engagement at Debris Free Oceans where I work, but we're a 501(c)(3), so we're careful. But really, just like did not know how to engage in the budget at all, and like when I would talk to colleagues, like to just get insight, it was pretty clear that there's just like a lack of awareness. And So my only experience like directly at a budget meeting was the one last session. And it was just crazy with how long the wait was to wait to give a comment, and I actually ripped my pants sitting outside because they didn't have enough chairs, and like went to sit on the floor in like this weird corner, and it was just a very fun
Oh my God.
experience. And I really loved I just thought you guys are doing this, and the models that you shared during the last call. Would just like love, and I'm sure like down the road you'll share more information of like what are the first steps to like getting that going here in Miami. Would love to help support that.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm so sorry about everything. It's always really chaotic. We tell people to get there at around 3-ish, but that's such a long time to, you're not there. They don't have food. They don't allow you to bring food inside. You're hungry. If you're number 80 something in line, you gotta wait until your number gets called. Yeah, it's not an efficient process at all. And then the worst part is that they don't even have a virtual option either. Because at least if they had a virtual option, it would be easier to participate. You could be doing stuff at home, just listening, but yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so we do have a few so I'll mention some of the barriers that we've noticed and that we are trying to get them to prioritize to make better. So for one, if you speak a different language, there is an interpreter that will interpret your comment to the commissioners, but there's no like interpretation from like back. So whatever the commissioners are saying, that person, if they don't speak English, they won't be able to understand. So that is a big thing we've noticed. The second thing, like I said, there's and we're not allowed by the state to do virtual participation unless it's like there's like a declaration of emergency or something happening. That's why in COVID we were able to, because it was a state of emergency. But the governor decided not to allow us to do that. But if there was a virtual process, that would be so great. It would mean that a lot of people wouldn't have to struggle to get to the government center at 5 p.m. on a weekday and be there for hours. So it's little things that can be done to make things easier. I think budget info sessions, they're great, but I think that there could be more hosted, more than 3, maybe 6 or 9 of them, throughout. And but we do have a few programs that are kind of like already having some type of participatory budgeting in action. And so Amy's going to talk about a few of these movements that are going on and groups that have these things that are prioritizing participatory budgeting. So I'm gonna pass it over to her.
Thank you for that, Ruth. Yes, so again, we are in this space and we're having conversations about, budgets and sharing some of this information that feels pretty gate kept, right? In these 1,000+ county budgetary documents. So wanted to also list this space as, PB in action. But if you heard us in our first session, we are a part of our larger coalition called the Divest Invest, where we set a list of coalitional priorities and fight for them at the county budget town halls and hearings. And this is a sort of larger priority setting that happens now all the way to September, where we all come together collectively and talk about things that we're hearing on the ground, and have that inform our budget priority setting. I also want to mention things that are already in existence at the county. So there are a multitude of boards, but the one board that I do want to shout out is the Youth Commission. Oh, sorry, Paulette, were you saying something?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah, so it's the Youth Commission Board. They get some funding, right? They have a discretionary reserve that they can use to support their programming and other additional things. So one of the lists up there, again, there's a whole list of boards that we as residents can be a part of, not just in the county, but also City of Miami. So some folks have mentioned the resilience board that's open to the public, amongst other boards. I want to shout out the Smile Trust, right? Last year, they led a pretty big canvassing campaign where they were curious about sort of needs that are being unmet by Black Miami-Dade residents. And they collected over 1,000 survey responses, and again, have used that to inform their programming and the advocacy work that they're doing. I also want to shout out the work that we're doing at Engage. Madeline, you had mentioned that, what are things that we're fighting for? So we have been fighting since last year for the adoption of a budget interactive tool, which would make our budget, which currently is only in English, but for our budgets to be multilingual, right? To be in Spanish, to be in Haitian Creole, and have spaces for participation, and have our budgets be interactive, right? Have graphs and maps and things that enable us to sort of have an easier time making sense of our county budget. So instead of that 1,000 plus pages, there are visual tools that can help us see what departments, what programs are being funded for. Someone mentioned earlier models of PB. Counties like Flagler and other counties in Florida have already adopted a tool similar to this. And so we're saying that, Miami-Dade is one of the largest contributors to Florida's GDP. It's insane that we don't have a tool that makes our public dollars, that makes that process transparent for us as residents, to make sense of where our dollars are going. We also have the Young People's Budget, which is a ongoing campaign, but every year we canvass in different neighborhoods across Miami-Dade County. Last week we canvassed in Opelika, and this is where we talk to residents and ask them where they would like to see funding in our county budget. We have collected over 2,370 survey responses, and we synthesize all of that to create the Young People's Budget Priorities. And again, I want to shout out our homies at Miami Worker Center, who similarly canvassed and specifically spoke to tenants in 3 public housing buildings, again, asking them what their needs are. So I want to shout out, that we are talking about this, but we're also, we're in the ground and I'm talking to folks and really want to ground, the space and, not just theorizing about this, but also putting it into practice. And our orgs are, we're out there. And yes, the Women's Fund, that is a great point. They have organized town halls with Mayor Kaba on the budget and what services are, supporting women and girls. So also want to shout them out, and a whole bunch of other folks that are, again, interacting with the county and, building spaces where we can actively contribute and also shape some of the priorities. Power U is also doing really great school board budget advocacy. As I mentioned earlier, the county budget processes happen almost simultaneously with the school board budget. So July 30th is the first school board budget hearing, and Power U is organizing around that. And so also want to, if you're curious about school board budgeting, definitely check out Power U.
Thank you. Thank you,
all right.
Amy. And I'm gonna make sure that all of that is included in our recap too. So we can add those links in there. So yeah. So sorry, I don't want to cut anyone off, but we do have oh, I don't know why it didn't refresh, but there's different ways that you can get involved. One, you can take this course, obviously, and invite your friends. You can also attend town halls and forums. So we talked about in August, there's definitely going to be town halls taking place, and we'll share the dates of those as soon as they're released. Um, you can speak at the budget hearings on September 4th and 18th. And Engage Miami, Amy just mentioned that we are trying to get a budget interactive tool, which breaks down the budget 20 times easier, where you can like click on each like little section, like kind of like a little graph on just like a little bar graph. That's what I imagine, or like a little chart where you can see like what each department is, where the money is going. And of course, multilingual. We know that in Miami, Spanish and Creole are basically right there tied with English and how much it's spoken. So I don't know if we can put that link in the chat. Oh, you already did it. Okay, perfect. This is just something so easy that the county has said multiple times that they would want to do this or that they already have something like this, but we haven't seen it done. So Engage Miami is starting this like movement to actually push them to do it. And Amy, I'll leave it to you to talk about your upcoming budget summit.
Yes, yes, yes. All right, y'all. Also just want to, before I talk about the summit, also want to uplift Camilo's comment that yes, session 4 will be all about public speaking, how it works, how we sign up for that. And then our coalitional spaces will be hosting trainings. So if you need help drafting your public comment, we're here for you. And also want to answer any questions leading up to the budget. And we host these trainings annually too. But all right, the summit. Yes, folks. So I'm also going to drop it in the chat. Sorry, y'all. All right, here we go. Just dropped it in the chat. Yeah, so again, we know that we're in a budget deficit, but we still think that there are things that we can do within the sort of local budgeting state, and there is funding that needs protection, and we're seeing that day in, right, where they're threatening cuts to parks, to libraries. And what we're seeing here is that this is a space where we want to sort of build out organizing power and have a space where we can talk about budgets and again make the same argument that budgets are about people. We're going to have cool workshops on poetry, on building a campaign, and again, tying it all back to the budget and how it can show up in August and September. Rochelle asked, what is the age range to attend? Yes, so anyone is welcomed, regardless of your age. When we talk about young people, we are thinking 18 to 35, but again, no one will be turned away if you show up. Everyone is welcomed, and matter of fact, we want you there. We think that again, generational spaces are important, and we know that everyone in this space has wisdom, and we want you all to be there. Camilo will be one of our panelists. We're going to have a panel early on where we're going to talk about, again, some of those models of, folks that are organizing around budgets and are winning. We have someone coming in from Orlando who's going to talk about medical debt that they got eliminated countywide through general funds, which again are those flexible dollars. And so we want this space to be a model for what we can do and, cultivate hope, right? There are things that we can do. We still have power. And we're just excited to be in the space. It's going to be at the Center for Social Change, second floor, y'all. Breakfast, 9:30 to 10 a.m. and we're gonna wrap up at 4:30. And you have the link. And yeah, and any questions on that or any questions on anything that we've covered so far?
And I'll make sure everything, like I said, will be sent in the recap email. So I'll send the interactive tool, the budget summit, and I'll send it out a few times a few times so that way you all are able to attend because I believe it's gonna be in between like this session and the next session. So maybe whoever, if any of you are able to attend, you can tell us how your experience was in session 3.
Yes, that's right. Also, this is not being put on solely by Engage Miami. We will have other partners in the space who will be leading workshops. And so again, we're gonna have Catalyst Miami, O Miami, Photo Rising, and other folks who are in this work too.
Thank you. All right, so 2 more things. So this is just kind of reflection homework. Reflect on your past participation in the county's budget process, what could be improved, and how would you like to participate in a potential future participatory budget process. So this is just something for you to keep in mind for next session. We're always going to be talking about this, and this is how we improve to be better. And in that same realm, we would love your feedback. So I'm gonna put the link in the chat too, but if you're able to scan the QR code and just answer, I think it's only like 4 or 5 questions. This would really help us improve a lot. Let me make sure. Let me make sure that it actually leads. Yeah, it does. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, this feedback form really helps us improve for everything. It helps us improve the sessions, or if you have any questions, I think there's a space to put that down. And that's basically it. If you have any questions, you can ask them also now or type them in the chat. If not, as soon as you're done with this feedback form, you're free to go.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. And Amy, I think that it's just one form. I think so. Right, Camilo?
Yeah, I think it applies, but I think it still says session 1, so we have to change that next time.
Okay. Got it. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night. And if anything, I will also send the link for the feedback form in our recap email if you aren't able to do it currently.
Thank you. Great work.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Y'all did great. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a good